Hi everybody, this video tutorial series will be about how to texture a 3D character using Maya and Substance Painter. So this is a continuation of two previous video tutorial series, one of how to model a character and then the second of how to UV map a character. This video we will talk about how to clean up our scene, organize it so that way we can export it, and export it in two methods that Substance Painter will accept. The next video we'll get through how to import in and then how to create textures, and then we'll finalize this by bringing the texture maps from Substance Painter back into Maya and applying it properly to PBR material in Maya. So my character is UV mapped properly. What I've done differently, just to show also in this tutorial series of how to do opacity map detail as well, is I've just added some cloth on top of the character. This will be on its own individual UV map. So if I go to UV editing in Maya, my body and my eyes, those three objects are on one UV set, and my cloth will be on a second UV set. So that way I can do my base default textures and then my cloth sitting on top of that. So before we export to Substance Painter, we need to make sure that there's no overlapping UVs, other than when we know we want this to be have it tiled of the texture. So here is my eyes. So if I look at the UV shells, I want both eyes to have the same exact texture to them. So we're going to use overlapping UVs for that section, but the rest of the body, no overlapping UVs. That way we can do as much as we can with the textures within Substance Painter. My cloth is also UV mapped as well, and for this point of view I just need to know where everything is. So I know this is my front corner, and this is the front of the neck of the cloth as well. So it's really important before we get to Substance Painter that you know how everything is unfolded, and that we don't have any overlapping UVs, and we can understand what everything is. Now, that doesn't mean when we get to Substance Painter that some of the textures will work perfectly. We may have to come back and make adjustments to some of the UVs, like straightening up some of the UVs. We're going to leave it as is and run with it for this demo with this setup. Okay, we'll go back to My Classic. So we need to do a couple of things. We need to make sure I have a couple of things in my scene, and I'm not going to export everything. I'm just going to export selected. I do want to make sure my objects are named properly. And before I export anything, I want to do two things. And the first one is to delete the history, especially on my body. I have UV mapping history, so I don't want that to go over to Substance Painter. So I'm going to select all of my objects, my body, my two eye objects, and my cloth, and go up to Edit, Delete by Type, History. Okay, so that clears out any history on any of these objects. The second thing I want to do is freeze the transforms, and I don't know if I have any transforms. Yeah, so this eye has a translate X value, and my cloth has a rotate X value as well. So I want to make sure I clear all of that out before I export. So let's select all of our objects again, go to Modify, Freeze Transformations. So that should clear out any transforms, default them back to 0 for translate and rotate and 1 for scale. Before we do any exporting, before we do every new stage of the character development process, we're going to delete the history and freeze the transforms. That makes sure everything is clean and organized and ready for the next stage. All right, so now we can talk about exporting. Before we export to Substance Painter, we want to make sure we set up our materials. So I'm going to go into my Hypershade material editor, and I already have some materials from the UE4 mannequin, but I want to create two new materials, one for the cloth and one for the body. In previous demos we talked about everything on the character head to toe should be on one UV map and one texture set, and that's still going to be the case. I just am showing a separate cloth material and UV set just to show an opacity demo, because my character is not going to need to have any cloth on top of it, but I'm just showing that for the demo purposes here. So we're going to create two new Stingray PBS materials. Stingray PBS. Okay. I'm going to come in here and we'll make sure I have some previous Stingray material nodes in here. I'm going to go ahead and name these. So I'm going to type in M underscore for material, and we'll call this one body. M underscore body. The next is m_cloth. Okay. So when I have a material separated for the cloth from the body. Now this is once again for just this demo. This is going to be a Stingray PBS material, so we're going to create in Substance Painter a base color, a normal, a metallic, a roughness. We can create other maps as well, but those would be the main four. Okay, so I'm going to select my 3 objects of my eyes and my body and assign that to my M body material. Okay. Then I'm going to select my cloth and assign that to my cloth material. Okay. So we want to make sure we set up our materials before we do any exporting. So that way the materials will get exported with the 3D file. Alright, so at this point we now have 2 methods of export. We can select the all of the body parts, even the cloth that's going to be on a separate UV map, it has a separate material. And we're going to select all of our objects and go to File, Export, Selection. And I'm going to go find my folder again, Mail Model folder. I already have some in this folder, so let me go remove it out. So desktop, Mail Model. Okay, and then I'm going to remove these objects out. There you go. Okay. All right. So we have 2 opportunities. We have FBX, and I'll show you in the next video what an issue is with this cloth with the FBX. And we can cause some other issues with other forms of geometry. It will save more information with the FBX file. So we'll do Mail Model Export and save this as a FBX. The other thing we want to make sure we change is that if smoothing groups is not turned on, that smoothing groups is checked. So we're going to first save it out as an FBX file, export selection. It's going to give me a warning because there's a Lambert material in there. That's all right. We're not going to need that Lambert material anyway. All right. So the second method is going to select everything again. I'm going to make sure I choose export selection again. And instead, I'm going to use OBJ. Okay, so an OBJ file, Mail Model Export. And just make sure the checkboxes are on for all of these groups, point groups, material smoothing, and normals. So the difference is OBJ saves less information for what Maya has. So the cloth, I have created this with dynamic simulation, and the FBX file is going to try to save some of the information, which is going to cause the cloth not to drape on top of the character. So I'm going to show you using the OBJ. FBX is fine pending that it comes into Substance Painter how you expect it to. But OBJ will come in perfectly without that extra information. A couple of notes: if you don't see the Stingray PBS material in the Hypershade Material Editor, or if you don't see under File Export Selection OBJ or FBX, it's just because the plugins are not turned on. So if you go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager, we can come down here and let's see, FBX is down here in its own little separate tab, so FBX can be turned on. Find shader effects. Okay, shader effects plugin is the one that allows us to see the Stingray PBS material. So I load and auto load these. And OBJ export, load and auto load. So if you don't see OBJ and FBX in the file save as or export selection, then you need to turn on those in the plugin manager. If you don't see the Stingray PBS, you need to turn on the shader effects plugin in the plugin manager. That way you can be able to save things out, create the materials, export properly. That'll wrap up this video. The next video we'll talk about how to import and set up our Substance Painter file.